Hi everybody, it's Lindsay with High Altitude Astrology, and I'm here with another video talking today about how Mercury retrograde is going for all of us. And if you're not aware, Mercury did enter retrograde on March 22nd, but it had entered its shadow period prior to that, which began on March 8th. And then what happens is on April 15th, Mercury stops retrograding. And then finally it leaves the shadow period on May 3rd. And the shadow period is the fact that Mercury, as it's moving forward, will cross over a specific degree. And in this case, it's 4 degrees Aries. And then which happened on March 8th. And then on March 22nd, when it actually is considered having gone retrograde at 16 degrees Aries, it begins to appear to move backwards, and it backs up all the way to 4 degrees again. So that shadow period in the beginning starts even before Mercury goes retrograde. It starts when it hits that 4 degree Aries period, because that's where Mercury is going to back up to in its retrograde cycle. And then it's considered out of shadow completely when Mercury actually moves forward past the point or the degree where it actually retrograded, which is at 16 degrees Aries. And that, of course, happens, like I said, on May 3rd. So it's really this whole time span between March 8th to May 3rd. But the real kind of challenging times, or the times where we might feel the energy most strongly, are when it actually retrogrades, which happened on March 22nd, and then when it stations and goes direct, which is going to be happening on April 15th. And I wanted to talk about what Mercury retrograde means and what Mercury in retrograde in Aries specifically means. And if you know your personal chart, it's important because you can see if this Mercury retrograde has a very specific quality for you personally. What you would look for is whether or not you have any personal planets at 16 degrees of Aries, whether your ascendant or your midheaven is at 16 degrees of Aries. So, for example, myself, I have Aries on my 7th house cusp at about 14 degrees. So this Mercury retrograde is more significant for me. Cusp of relationships in my life, of partnerships, of business partnerships, and that kind of thing. And I can already see it kind of affecting me. Specifically, I was working with a particular person and on a project, and then I decided during the course of the start of this shadow period and around the Mercury retrograde time that I was actually going to pursue a different course, work with somebody else, and have actually been seeing better results. So that's just one example of how you can try and discover a little bit more specifically how a Mercury retrograde might be working in your particular life or in your chart at this time. So what does it mean to have Mercury retrograde in Aries? Well, of course, in general, Mercury retrograde is always given that bad rap of like, oh, technology breaks down and people forget about appointments that they've scheduled, and communication just gets really messed up because of this apparent backward movement of Mercury in the sky. But, those things, yes, can pop up. But that isn't the point of a Mercury retrograde. It's not to make our lives more difficult, although sometimes it can feel that way because we certainly, can have to deal with those kinds of things more frequently during Mercury retrograde times. But it's really about reviewing from a mental or a communicative or a thought process perspective, things that are happening in our lives, and, rethinking and going down that path again and wondering if this is the right thing for you. So specifically in Aries, Aries is about asserting ourselves. Aries can be impulsive, but Aries can also be courageous. So really it's a time where we can, rethink in a new way how we want to do something in our lives, whether we want to do something in our lives. So it's useful for us. It can be good to review things with a fresh perspective, that Aryan perspective, or really allow us to have the courage to kind of, take a step in a new direction as we've rethought something in our lives. I'll give you another example, and this is probably one of those no-nos for Mercury retrograde, but I am in the process of building a website, and I've been trying to find a logo designer, and I actually thought I was going to go with one and then kind of realized that I didn't really want to during this Mercury retrograde time. But what I did do is I committed to another one. And I probably shouldn't have done that during the Mercury retrograde time, but life needs to keep moving forward. I have to get something completed. And what I realized is that I kind of hastily, Mercury retrograde in Aries, made the decision to go with one particular person for their logo design. And now I'm kind of like realizing that, I may have rushed into it, and I'm stuck with kind of trying to work this out and still, make it be something to my advantage and not just be a total loss, as I'm continuing to realize that maybe I just didn't give myself the time that I needed to actually make the right choice for myself. And Mercury retrogrades are not great times for signing contracts or, initiating new projects per se. It's great for reviewing old projects. And actually, it has been a great time for me personally to kind of like make great strides with this particular project of creating a website, but actually like bringing somebody new into the picture and locking myself into a contract, probably not the best choice for myself. But I'm dealing with it, and it's requiring me to just sort of try and really stay on it and get it resolved. So this is an example of what Mercury retrograde can be like. And in general, though, this Mercury retrograde, personally, I've just been feeling like there's a lot of energy behind it, because Aries is full of energy. So it feels different from other Mercury retrogrades. It definitely feels like we are, there is energy to get a lot accomplished on the thought plane, on the communicative plane, on the, checking tasks off our list plane. It feels like there's a lot of energy. It doesn't feel like it's major like confusion and sluggishness per se, although it is Mercury retrograde requiring us to slow down and review, but it feels like there's a lot of energy to accomplish a lot, and that I'm really enjoying about this Mercury retrograde time. Two other things that happened just quickly after Mercury retrograde was that on the 23rd of March, the Venus in Aries squared Pluto in Capricorn, and on the 24th of March, the Sun in Aries squared Mars in Capricorn. And I just find that it's interesting that these two different aspects occurred after that Mercury retrograde, because I feel like with Mercury retrograde being that time to go back and review things and rethink things, with that Venus squared Pluto, that's really about our, making sure that our desires are being met, Venus and Aries. And with Pluto and Capricorn, it can be about the process of transformation around those desires, and the process of letting go, and the process of releasing in many ways, especially because Pluto in Capricorn is about transforming like the status quo and transforming the way things have always been. So that's a very interesting energy to have happened right after that Mercury retrograde, because I think it speaks to the types of things we might be rethinking at this time, our relationship issues, and whether or not they're meeting our desired needs. And then the other thing is the Sun squaring Mars. That's about really allowing ourselves to feel courage and to feel our passions and making sure that they are aligned with our solar expression and with our self-expression. So that too could be another energy at this time that's like kind of saying, you know, take action. You know, this is important that you really are in alignment with what is working best for you or what you want for yourself in your life. And a couple of other things that are occurring as we complete this Mercury retrograde cycle is that Venus will be conjuncting Uranus on the 28th of March in the sign of Aries again. And again, this is like Venus conjunct Aries. You know, this is really like allowing change in our relationships, you know, and kind of breaking free of any shackles. You know, Uranus wants its independence. Uranus wants to feel free. So it's Venus, our pleasures aligning with that desire to have that freedom within our relationships that we're looking for. So again, like another kind of beacon of like real shift around our relationships at this time. And the Sun will be squaring Saturn, Sun in Aries and Saturn in Capricorn on the 29th of March. And that's a time where the self-assertive energy could feel a little restricted by Saturn and feel like, oh, you know, we're supposed to like, you know, keep doing things the way we're always doing it. But Saturn in Capricorn, that, you know, that is about working towards our goals, but we got to make sure that we are connected to what it is, you know, we're really wanting. And again, with Saturn, sometimes there's a very there's this elimination that happens with Saturnian energy as well. So, you know, it could be a time where we're just kind of, it's like, okay, rubber meeting the road. We really need to implement or to take action towards kind of letting go and narrowing, you know, our solar expression when it comes to our desires, our Aries nature, you know, our wanting to go after things for ourselves. And finally, Venus at the end of the month will be moving into Taurus, and that happens on the 30th. So Venus and Taurus, Venus is in its home sign because Venus rules Taurus. So it's another indication that we'll be moving more towards connecting with our pleasures and really wanting our pleasures to be fulfilled with Venus and Taurus. You know, Venus and Taurus can be very content. It can be very sort of like it's fixed in nature. So it can kind of like stay put. You know, it doesn't necessarily always want change per se, but Venus and Taurus also really wants what it wants. It really wants its pleasure satisfied. So another indication at this time that we're moving towards, you know, that type of experience for ourselves and our lives. So this has been my discussion of Mercury retrograde. Hope it's going well for you. Again, we have until May 3rd technically, but really it goes direct on April 15th, and things, you know, will start feeling more clear, and we'll be kind of moving out of that Mercury retrograde energy. Thanks so much for watching my video. Please subscribe if you like my channel, and also you can reach me for readings at info@highaltitudeastrology.com. Thank you so much. Adios.